So to start that, I'm just going to pack this into a ball. Because a round ball shape is going to be the easiest to work with since we want to make a round-like shape. I have about 3 pounds of clay here, although I would recommend you starting out with closer to 1 pound, just to kind of get the mechanics. To get to our 6-inch height requirement, you might need 2 or 3 pounds of clay. But before we can get that height, we just need to understand some of the basics. So if you can see on here, the wheel heads have a series of concentric circles, and that's really nice for trying to figure out how to center something. Because if I start with the clay over here, it's going to be really hard to put to the center of the wheel head. But if I am able to place it right in the center based on the lines, it's already much easier. So I want to make sure that I do that. And when I do that, it's really important that this is really secure to the wheel head. Sometimes you will see people reach back and throw down and smack this onto the wheel head as loud or as hard as they can. That mainly just makes a loud noise. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, try and put that, looks like that's pretty close to the center. And then to get started, I'm just going to, using the palms of my hand, just sort of smack this down to the wheel head. Like so. And again, it's off center. We can still, hopefully you can see that shaking happen, that variation in surface. That's what we don't want. But now I'm ready to start centering, and this isn't going to come off the wheel head. It's really important that it's pressed down really firmly. If water gets under there, it's just going to slide your clay off. So we want to be careful of that. So I'm ready to start centering. Tools we're going to need for this. We're going to need a bucket for water or some container for water, a small sponge, a wooden rib, potentially a needle tool, and the wooden knife tool. So here we go. So I'm going to put some water down. So at this point, now that the clay is on the wheel, I don't ever want to touch the clay unless the wheel is spinning. Centering is hard enough as it is, but if I'm touching the clay, like right now, if I'm like doing this sort of rubbing, smoothing thing, it's just going to ruin everything. If you're touching the clay while the wheel is not spinning, you're just going to mess everything up. So here we go. So now what we need to do is figure out how to get this even, get this centered. It looks like kind of like a half sphere is what we're going for. And so I'm just going to do 2 really specific things, one with each hand. And so with my left hand, I'm going to use this part of my palm, and I'm going to be pressing this in right here. So if I think of this wheel head as a clock, we have noon right here, 6 o'clock closest to me, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I'm over here at like 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, pushing in with my palm, just with this part. This part of my hand and my fingers are absolutely useless. Right now, this is a really firm spot. If you can see, that doesn't move a lot. This moves a lot here because of the way my wrist moves. And also, if I put too much pressure here, it's going to flex my wrist too far, and it's really going to hurt after a while. So I just want to be right up against this joint, and I don't need to overflex my hand that way. And that's going to help straighten up the side of this. One thing you're going to find is that the clay is going to be kicking back a lot, and it's going to be pushing your arm back. So it's really important that you take this left arm and wedge it up. I'm standing up, by the way, instead of sitting down, but I'm going to wedge my elbow into my side as much as I can so it doesn't, so the clay has to push me back, not just my arm. So now I'm going to use the bottom part of my right fist and press down. Now I'm just squeezing both of those together as firm as I can. If you can see my fingers on my left hand are out here out of the way. Because I really just want those 2 points of contact. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a centered piece of clay. We get rid of some of this extra at the bottom. And you want it to be moving much less. So again, I'm just gonna put some more water down, get this a little bit more centered. If at any point the clay starts feeling dry or sandy, or your hand feels kind of like it's burning, you need more water. More water is kind of the catalyst for all of this happening. The clay will dry out your hands and vice versa way too fast, and the water and slip comes in as like a lubricant to help everything work much better. So you can't really see it here, but my water bucket, I don't really change it out very much. And that's so that it becomes more of a slip than water, because slip's going to be much more slippery than water, and therefore helpful in the throwing process. Let's put a little bit more down. And again, I'm pushing with this hand just in this direction. And notice that as I do that, the side's getting taller. See how this is only flexed about, let's call that 45 degrees. If I do this all the way back here like this, see this 90-degree angle up here on the top view? This is a really painful angle for your wrist. So you want to make sure that you're almost a little bit straighter. And again, my fist is coming down at 4 o'clock. And I'm just gonna push down until I get the shape that I want. Like so. And notice with my top hand, I'm not dead in the center. If I'm dead in the center, it starts making a little bit of a well inside. So I'm over here off to the side. You know, if I want to think about how I'm contacting the clay, I want to touch the clay as little as I can, as most effectively as I can. So just touching one part of the side and one part of the top. You know, so as I'm pushing down, I'm just pushing right here. And the reason I don't need to push everywhere is because the clay's spinning into my hand. So the more I touch, right now the clay's pushing into here. If I go over it, I'm going to be kind of twisting the clay, and I don't want that. So it's just nice and smooth in one spot. And just like that, that's centered. And so this is one of the hardest aspects, one of the most necessary aspects of wheel throwing. Before we can really start to even make something look like a cylinder, we need to be able to center. And so again, I would practice this. I would just get, you know, I'm going to end up giving you a bunch of clay tomorrow. And I would just make, you know, a half dozen, 10, whatever you feel like, you know, 1 pound ball of clay is just try and practice with this. Because the more you kind of have to, if you have to like get up and make clay every time or get a piece of clay every time, you're just going to lose too much time. And just having clay at the ready is really important.